Let's go to Vince in the city. Hi, Vince. What's up? You're on with Willard and Disb.
Hey, what's up, guys? Just wanted to answer the question you asked, where his stress level is at. I'm with you. I don't know if I'm necessarily stressed out about this game. Whether we win or lose, I don't feel like it's going to make a huge difference in the seeding because I don't see anybody really knocking off Philadelphia from the 1 seed. So I think a run to the Super Bowl is going to have to go through Philadelphia at the end of the season.
Yeah, go ahead, Vince. Probable, yeah.
Yeah. And so my main concern really is how competitive are we going to be in this game? Are we going to play like the solid first 5-week 49er football and put a whooping on them? Or are we going to get run out the field? What are we going to do? We got all these pieces, all this hype. So now it's time to show what we can do. And are we actually going to compete? And are we going to be a force? Or are we, just going to be another L in the column?
I don't think it's possible to run the 49ers off the field. Thanks, Vince. I also don't think it's terribly possible to do it to the Eagles either. I don't really think that a blowout in either direction is possible in this game. That would shock the living hell out of me.
Short of something that we already saw in the NFC Championship game.
Correct. I mean, if people actually are in their position and they play this game, these two teams are so good across the board. They have so many good trench players. I don't see somebody winning this game by 3.5 touchdowns.
Agreed. I do think that if Philly goes down by 2 touchdowns, they have a better chance to win still than if the Niners go down by 2 touchdowns.
That's probably true for a number of reasons. It's probably true, but I don't think that that's necessarily on the table. But some of the other stuff, is kind of where I find the intrigue here. Are the Eagles still going to get home field even if the Niners win? I don't know. I do think if the Eagles, if all of the sort of holes in their game that people are pointing to right now, a lot of people, you got away with a bunch of games that you should have lost and you won. Okay, I think that's kind of a tough argument to make, but even if you try to make it, let's say they get exposed and the Niners win by 10. Okay, do I think that the Eagles are almost likely to lose again next week? I do. The Cowboys will be the more rested team. They're at home. They're potentially more dynamic offensively. I do think the Cowboys can beat and probably will beat the Eagles next week. And so the scenario exists for the 49ers to be in the driver's seat as soon as 10 days from now. But that's still asking for the 49ers to be pretty much perfect the rest of the way,
right?
Which is absolutely no guarantee no matter who they're playing. But don't forget they got Baltimore on the schedule. So that's really hard. The reason I'm chilling is because, I don't think there's as much at stake here with the whole, it seems for a lot of people to be about what people say. Oh, you'll be able to say that you can go into Philly and win. I don't care if you can say it. I just want to know if you do it in January. It doesn't matter what you can say in the first weekend in December. And I think a fairly good consolation prize to the number 1 seed, a fairly good consolation prize is avoiding Dallas in the playoffs. I'm not scared of Dallas, but beating Dallas and Philly in back-to-back weeks is really hard. Let's see if I can think of a time where they tried that and didn't work. Oh, right, last year.
Right. Last year is a total anomaly, though, in terms of the way it played out.
I do think that's the hardest thing to ask an NFC team to do. If you remove all of the other stuff, bye weeks and home field, remove all of that, what's the hardest 2-step for the Niners? To beat the Cowboys and Eagles in back-to-back weeks. I think it's really hard. I don't think the Eagles are going to do it, and I think that's hard. So I think that's a fair thing to say. I'd rather play Detroit in round 2 than Dallas.
But there's no guarantee on how the bracket will shake out.
No, of course not.
So in terms of the last 2 games, absolutely, you'd rather have an easier road if you could have it, but I think you'd rather have home games as opposed to trying to pick the opponents you're going to play in the way that goes. I do look at the Niners schedule, and I look at the Rams in Week 18, and the Rams might be playing for a playoff spot.
Absolutely.
Because the NFC is in a spot where, you might have a team at 9-8 get that last wild card. It might be an 8 and 9 team because that 7 spot is full of just mediocrity right now. You've got Minnesota in there. You've got Green Bay still in the mix. You have the Rams still in it. New Orleans and Atlanta, whoever loses that division. Tampa's not really out of it, but I'm going to say that they are because I think Seattle and Dallas are going to be the wild cards. And then that third wild card is going to be up for grabs.
Anybody.
And, the Commanders right now aren't out of it. By the time you play them, they probably will be. They're 4-8, but Baltimore is going to be playing for a lot. And the Rams in that last week, I think, also will be playing for a lot. And Seattle, we know, is playing for the division. So even if they get by Philadelphia, it's not automatic smooth sailing for the Niners.
Not at all. Yeah, that Bears win in Minnesota really tightened things up. The Vikings, if they were 7-5 right now, would definitely have much more of an inside track than they do. And now they simply have a half-game lead on a bunch of teams. They got a half game. They're half game behind Seattle, but they're only a half game ahead of Green Bay, half game ahead of New Orleans, half game ahead of the L.A. Rams. You bring in Washington. Those are the 4-8 teams. But, yeah, it got all jumbled up now. You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. I want to be sure that you understand me, though. Again, I did call it a consolation prize. I'm not saying that that's what I would shoot for. I want the Niners to get the 1 seed. But if they're to lose this weekend and the 1 seed becomes pretty unrealistic at that point, I don't think it's a horrible sort of scenario to say, okay, now go get that 2 seed and let Philly play Dallas in round 2. Let them do that. Let them beat each other up. And you can have Jared Goff's homecoming here at Levi's Stadium. And yes, I grant you there's no guarantees that it would play that way, but I can see that not being the worst case scenario for the 49ers. And by the way, there's a fair chance that Dallas would win that game, and then your 2 seed does become home field advantage throughout.
Yeah, and it just depends on, if you can handle your own business. And you get to that last weekend in the NFC Championship game, you'd love it at home, but you just want to be in that game. I do think that there's a lot to be said to winning this game to give you that belief that you can go there and win. It's not to say that if they lose on Sunday that they're going to think, well, we can't win there. We got to make sure we avoid Philadelphia because we can't win there. But I do think that there's benefit to the muscle memory of going somewhere and getting something done and doing it.
That's fair.
And, to go to Philadelphia, you're not looking at the NFC Championship game as a real loss. Yes, you lost. They went to the Super Bowl, you didn't. But part of you still thinks, well, you know what? If this didn't happen, if the quarterback didn't get hurt, I think we could have won that game. Well, now you have a chance to prove that to yourself that you can win in Philadelphia. And if you don't win in Philadelphia, it doesn't mean that all is lost, but it means you still have that in your mind where you haven't gone with this group and done that. If you win this game, even if you have to go back there in January, you at least have the memory of, well, we just went there 7 weeks ago, guys, and we beat this team in a high-leverage game in that stadium. We know we can do it.
888-957-9570, Michael in Pasadena. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Hey, I want to talk about Brock Purdy. Him coming back from the injury and not really caring about it for the game really impresses me. I'm actually coming off an injury myself. I broke my foot in Mexico and dislocated 7 metatarsals on a bike ride. So, and I'm like, oh, I'm never getting on a bike again. And he's like, oh, I'm just going to get on a football field and go against these guys, and it's no problem. So I'm just really enamored by him. And my stress level for this weekend, I just really want to see how we match up against them, because I'm assuming we'll probably play them in the playoffs, and I want to see what we look like.
Well, I agree with that. Like, it's all the fun. That's kind of the way I look at it. Michael, thanks. This is all the fun. This is all the good stuff. You got trash talk. You got big fan bases barking at one another. But when it's over, I actually think some of the stress and fear that people have about this game, for instance, our friends in the morning. Let me just spotlight Bonte and Joe for a second. I feel like they might be more fired up for this game because of what it might mean for them if they lose. In other words, they've engaged so much, and I get why after the trip there last year, but you've engaged so much with the Philadelphia media and this trash talk deal that it's like, are you worried for the Niners, or are you just worried because it'll feel like there's egg on our personal faces if the Niners lose? I would just like my sort of philosophy there, just avoid that whole thing. Avoid that whole thing, and then this game becomes just the fun part. This is everything that the NFL is all about. But there's not, like, it's not a disaster if they lose. I'm not trying to set it up for, oh, that's okay. That's not it. It's a huge game. There's all kinds of emotion. I like what you said. I think there's some belief that the Niners can gain if they go out there and play well. But outside of that, nothing is lost, and more importantly, nothing is won. Nothing is won if you win this game.
I think what is won is that sense of belief that you can go there and win a game against a good team on that field after you went there in the playoffs and you didn't win a game against that team on that field.
I'm with you, except for that isn't it your perception, it is mine, of the 49ers that, like, dude, I am not worried about what the 49ers believe about themselves.
Agreed.
I think they believe they are indestructible in ways that are not even true.
Right, but I do think that it's human nature that self-doubt will creep in when there's something that you haven't done, even though you believe you've trained for it and you think you can do it and you know you can do it and you're supremely confident until you actually do it. There is that little sliver of doubt, of self-doubt that you can actually do it. I think about when I ran a marathon for the first time. I had run 20 miles or more many times. I was fit. I knew the course. I was ready. My training was on point. Everything was lined up to where I was going to finish the marathon. I had no doubt. But then you get into it, mile 18, mile 19, mile 20. You get to mile 22, and all of a sudden I'm starting to see the roads a little wobbly and the vision's starting to go, and now I'm running sideways, and self-doubt creeps in until you get it done. And when you get it done, it's like, I know now that I can do that because I've done it. And so I think the Niners, to your point, are supremely confident. They feel like they're the best team in football. They can win anywhere, anytime against any foe. But you get into that game in that stadium, and there will be a sliver of self-doubt when 70,000 fans are raining booze down upon you, and you got to go to a silent count, and you're down 21-17 in the fourth quarter, and you're going to have to dig deep. There's a little self-doubt that will creep in. It's human nature.
Is there, or are they football players, and because they're crazy, that actually doesn't even cross their mind? These people arrive to work with a boombox.
Right.
Dancing. This is how they arrive to work. Brock Purdy says he'll go out on the field to express his thankfulness that he gets to do this. So I think the romanticism of all this in some ways gets to us more than it does them. Like Brock Purdy, one of the cuts we played earlier referred to it as a hostile environment. And I think in our brains we go, oh, hostile environment, the fans. Oh, those fans. Is it really that terrifying? It's just people with beer yelling. The hostile part is that Hassan Reddick is trying to dismember me.
Well, the hostile part is fans on fans. I don't think it's fans on the players.
Right. Like it's not.
And that's why Joe and Bonte in the morning, I get that they're holding on to this a little bit more personally because of what they went through last year when they were there.
Of course. And I didn't, we watched it. I didn't experience it.
No.
It sounds like it sounds like hell. Sounds awful.
Awful.
But
and they went through it, and so I get why they were calling it Eagles Hate Week, and I get it. I mean, it's not how I feel, but I didn't go through what they went through. And Bonte in particular, where you got racial epithets being hurled at you, and people throwing hot dogs and pouring beer on you. Dude, I'm just a guy trying to go enjoy a sporting event. Imagine if tonight you go to the Warrior game and all the fans who are mad at you for not holding Steve Kerr's feet to the fire.
Yes, that's true.
They start throwing hot dogs at you and pouring beer on you.
I'll open my mouth.
Dude, it's just
free food.
I'm going to eat it.
I'm going to eat it.
Thank you.